Welcome to the second devlog for my zombie survival game that I'm developing in Unity. If you saw the previous video, you would have seen the prototype I put together with the basics in place such as the shooting, zombies, waves, and so on. And if you didn't see that video, well, I just summed it up in about 10 seconds, so I guess you didn't miss much. The first thing I want to cover today is the name of the game, as it's a lot nicer than saying that zombie survival roguelite, and it makes it stand out. And it turns out you can name things basically anything you want, and these names can include letters, numbers, and even more letters. But how do you decide what to actually name something? Well, I did what all the big brands do these days, typed the prompt into ChatGPT to see what it could come up with. I started by asking it to write a list of names by giving it a basic description, and let's see what it's given us. Okay, so we've got Necrotic Exodus, Dreaded Decay, Plague-born Peril. Wow, it really likes alliteration, just look at these. And they're all pretty terrible, so let's see what else it can do. Okay, these are basically just the same names, a lot of alliteration again. How is this going to take over the world? Alright, let's ask it again. Zombie Descent Rogue Survival. That's just 4 random words. We're not really getting anywhere. Eternal Decay Survival Reborn. That's basically the same thing. Why is it so wordy? Dark Exodus Undead Odyssey. Okay, it's just following the same pattern and doesn't want to change its course. Okay, Undead Odyssey. It's dropped the first bit, shortened it. Now we're sort of getting somewhere. Oh, god damn it. We're back to even wordier than ever. Alright, let's rattle through these and see where it gets us. Zombie Realm. Not awful. Zombie Blitz. Get in there. Zombie Saga. Okay. Zomball is somehow the best answer of the lot. Zomquest. It's really stuck putting zombie in the title, isn't it? Okay, I was confident in Zomquest. It's given it to me again. Okay, you've tried Zomquest and Zomquest. How about Zomquest? And finally, Zombify. Nah. You know what? As it tried 3 times, I'll give it Zomquest. The best it's come up with. Let's try one more thing. I'll give it the name I came up with. See how it rates it. Among the Graves is a captivating and evocative name for a game. Well, there you go. It's ChatGPT official. I got an 8 out of 10 for naming my own game. So let me know in the comments which one sounds better. Among the Graves, Zomquest, Zomquest, or Zomquest. In the last episode, I said the replacement of the sprites would have probably started by the time this video rolled around. And wouldn't you know, that was a lie. Aside from replacing the wall textures with an asset pack I downloaded for prototyping, they're exactly the same as before. The zombies have had a slight upgrade from the red coloured soldier to generic blob, but that's about it. The main visual work I have done though that I'm actually happy with is the weather and lighting effects I've created. With this controller I've made, I can go ahead and change the time of day in the game, as well as add various weather types such as this standard rain, a more aggressive storm, and some snowfall. I think these look great, and it's very easy for me to combine these weather types together to add a bit of variety even if the level isn't actually changing. Progress was rather stunted at this point as my busy schedule got in the way, and we took a trip up to Billund to visit Legoland and the Lego house. It was a pretty great time and I'd recommend it to anyone. That's all I have to say about this section. It doesn't add anything related to the project, it was just enjoyable. But anyway, back to the game. In the first part, the zombies were basically just walking targets. They didn't do anything except relentlessly chase the player. So I finally decided to give them some brains. Attached to the zombies is a new component for detection. It literally just casts a ray out in front of the zombie, and if it collides with something that is marked as a target, the zombie will stop moving and instead start attacking. Once they lose that target, they're back to chasing. It's a really dumbed down finite state machine, but it's all the brains that these guys need. They know to hunt players down and smack things if they get in the way. But what are they actually searching for? Well, I've also added these barriers to the game that block the zombies' navigation, meaning they have to break through them to get to the player. They use the exact same code as the other units, meaning adding these was very easy, and they can be used to block doorways, slowing down the zombies. At the moment they're just placed at the start of the game, but I think I'll open this up to the player to choose where and when to place them, maybe by having them pre-placed on every doorway but require building first. Another unit I added was the sentry gun. Similarly to the barricade, this item will be deployed by the player during a run and will shoot at any zombie in its sight. Each sentry will come with a set amount of bullets and will be targetable by zombies. So it's just as important for a player to defend the sentry as it is the sentry defending the player. Once the sentry is out of ammo, the player will be able to refill it for a set amount of points. However, this interaction will take a few seconds, leaving the player vulnerable to attacks. To avoid having the player infinitely hide behind a sentry, the point cost will also scale with each use, making it harder and harder to afford the sentry. How I have it planned to be implemented in the full game is that sentries will spawn randomly across the map, ready to be activated, and will also be carried in by the player, assuming they have them available. The main goal for the player is to simply survive, but around the map will also be secondary tasks for them to complete. One of these will be to save any survivors in the area. Scattered around the map will be survivors that have barricaded themselves inside, and it's up to the player to locate them and escort them to a rescue zone. Once interacted with, the survivors will follow the player around, and once in range of a rescue zone, they'll run in, and the player will be rewarded once they return to base. And this is just one of the ways the player will gain new gear throughout their runs. Across the map will also be supply crates to search, items to find, and places to visit, to grant the player permanent and temporary boosts for their later runs. These features aren't quite ready yet, but if you subscribe right now, I'm sure you'll see them soon. One of the biggest parts of game development that I don't think gets too much coverage is the behind the scenes management of the player spawning, the level loading, and so on. So how am I going about this for this game? Well, at any given time, there are actually two scenes loaded in, one being the current level or menu, and the other a management scene. All this scene contains is a component for game management and loading. Currently, all the game manager does is keep track of whether the game is paused and sets up the players into the scene once loaded, but we'll have a bit more to do further down the line. The scene loader is pretty self-explanatory. By using async operations, when the scene is called to load, it will close any current loaded scene and load up a new one additively, which means it's loaded alongside the manager. This means that instead of every level containing these objects, they only have to appear once, keeping any potential data loaded throughout, instead of having to write to disk on every time a scene is loaded. And speaking of writing to disk, I've got the basis of the save file system working. At the moment, there isn't any actual score or experience system for the player's progression, which will be saved in here, so these values are just temporary. But I've got the player's name, max health, and current weapon all saved into a JSON file. At the moment, it only supports a single file, and there's no way to manage it, but it works for testing purposes, which is good enough for me. When I start up the game, these values are loaded in and sets the player up nicely. And that is where I'm currently at with this project. It's starting to take shape as a real game. Playing it is already quite fun. There's obviously a long way to go still, but I'm enjoying this development. I hope you are too. Let me know your thoughts down below, leave a like on it, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.